Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Not that easy, but it's okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Except you. During afternoon dela, then Prabhupada sigi go on this meditate, practice. Those nyamlen of this gumlung of transmission of those chiccharas.
This afternoon, I'm going to present to you the transmission for the meditation practice of Arya Avalokita, or the Bodhisattva Chenrezig.
Today in Jusan, Tatapadongazu, Tana, Kasane, Niji Golia, those Chevre, the evening Chevre, the Nimakashana, Karachambre, in Azusame, Missinang, Missigi, and the Samno, when David needs to sometime do, as Missinangi. Not only Ninji Sade, Kadaji catch me, Ninji, the Nyar of Kalazam Shoyare. Today in Dusanda, the Shita catch him, but Azuchi Nyoadis, Azura Nyamyon Machoa Maimba, Nyamyon Mambo Shoyare, the Dabu Yamato in Dusane, Nyamyon Mambo Nyamda. Nyamdang now not so strong you be now. The Temeba, Chusu Chiare. The Dermain Bangazutan are Mizina Yamda Yama Karachon, but the datam J Sani, the chow sauce to the Danga Tusumji gave us Zatam J. San, Sajorba. Then I see the Sani. Tetamje and Ninji Yamlen Chigitora G to Goya de Kajimbo, Ravade something of those.
Yesterday and this morning, I've been speaking quite a bit about compassion, and basically I feel that I'm saying whatever occurred to me at the time to say. But if we reflect upon our lives up to this point, we will see how important compassion really is in our lives. And we'll also see that we actually have experience of it. Compassion is not something that we've never experienced. We've experienced it, although we tend to ignore those experiences or discard them and undervalue them. Just as when we dedicate virtue, we gather all the merit accumulated throughout past, present, and future into one thing. In the same way, we need to gather together all of our experiences of compassion, and based on that, then cultivate it consciously in our lives.
Today, choose some ye, sange tamje tuning jishambo, choose them duba. De la yidam lai susu, sharwa, de baba genesis.
Now, the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokita or Chenrezig is the embodiment in the form of a single deity of all of the compassion that resides within the hearts of all Buddhas of all directions, all the 10 directions, and all times, past, present, and future.
Konge gundo gabu dawa nyakawa dabuti namya perwada jiba meba simjen ji twendo kaduine ninji dawa nyakawa dabuti namya perwada jiba meba ji
He's depicted or seen as brilliant white, like the disk of the full moon, to indicate that his compassion is unfluctuating, it does not wax and wane, and that is his compassion toward all beings without exception.
Kong cha shi di kong be lega mangbu tene kong be cha lega mangbu tene ne cha shi sorry lega mangbu tene ne cha shi di teba dabu mayin ba cha shi bu de zo ce me ba shi go ne sim je nam tuen ze ba dida chun je la ane cha shi namba demba.
He has 4 arms because he is so busy and hardworking. No, he has the 4 arms to show that he benefits beings by means of the 4 immeasurables.
Dea chamba ninji gawa tangyom ina cha kare kare chamba ninji ya gomas.
The 4 immeasurables are love, compassion, empathetic joy, and impartiality, but I can't tell you which hand represents which of the 4.
Dade kan tu ra so so chen na tere.
Whatever occurs to you about that is probably fine.
Kong ne rubjung cha de ge namba mayin ba jel ane cha zeng ge namba ane kimbe jenda jebe go ne jebe namba dember tene da zo azu ji duje semje namji nane ane rabdo chongale kimba mangwa kimba de da dewe shedo senju samba namji namba ine ya kimba mangwa teba yimbe chirna ane ji kimbe chelo do nawa isir.
And I think that the reason why he appears dressed in the costume of a layperson or householder rather than a monastic is that more of those who are tamed by him are lay people than monastics.
Tene konge tsela area wa lokidishwara tadi sanskrit la deshishra shumi 가렌스나 드린데 아주 야가르기 고나주 신유여바 망보페샤 고나주 잘라 아주 야가게 시안라 미실레 디주 산스크든 디제 전에 아보민도 샴데 주사레 제자 텔레 뷔게라 디제 저기 파바체레스 세두 제레스아데 네 미기 세사레 밀레 젠스요레 젠기 시스요레 데레 니지 쳔베 젠기 로리루기 심진 탐제라 듀다도 시버인 비치나 제레스 데레 제레스 시차와데 가사시면바 조 투규의 랭게 차네 ane tse te toba imbre.
His name is in its fullest form Arya Avalokiteshvara, but I'm not going to analyze his name as it appears in the original Sanskrit, because there are no doubt many people here of Indian origin who are learned in Sanskrit, and which means that if I slipped up I might get caught, which would be embarrassing. So therefore, in order to avoid that, I will comment upon his name as it has been translated into Tibetan, which is Papa Chenrezig Wangchu. And he's called Chenrezig, or he who gazes with his eyes, because his eyes are always gazing upon or seeing all beings all the time. This name, therefore, should not be particularly regarded as an ordinary personal name of him as a person, but more as a description of the qualities of his mind.
Yeah, this is a good Papa Jealousy. Jendi Mitsum ne Dedi Horasium. Mitanda Miminzum Sado. Papa Jealousy. But then I don't Mitsuna do something. Me yet him at the child. Takom me Mitsum, Decora, Migi Della could use a manda. Me dancing in Kansas, you get that. So the Niji Chambodi. Be.
So, a synonym to that name is eyes never shut, or migmizum. And what it doesn't literally mean that he never blinks or never shuts his eyes. We know from our own experience that if you have eyes, you need to occasionally blink. So what's referred to here by the title of eyes is his compassion, the gaze or regard of his compassion, which is unceasing and unfluctuating.
제가 Papa Jealousy 전도인데 so quality 그런 게 유행이 차네. 아니 Papa Jealousy 제 그렇게 다음 임신 주사네. 다들 Jealousy 냠내스도 다 Jealousy 기베 꾸이나 보고 짬매봐. so Papa Jealousy 셰베 퇴기 닝부디 니지셔 니지셔베 냠내데 이버래 니지셔베 냠내데 체 랑와지 총부이나 아도 Papa Jealousy 꾸이나 봐 고마곰다 안에 가수다 곰네 야버래 마곰네 드로스 마도야 참성 아주 too much 가르쳐다지 수니엘라 셴바침 버르체 디 사이 수니엘부터 봐 지세도 이제 자침 버르지 라 자침 버르지 소소 디친길라요 소소르체 이나 랑 심규디 동바르 땅산데 드고 심규디 니지 가와지 총나 아니 신이에데 라 공부이네야 사정은 가서 닝여버도 되지 가서 나는 니지메나 Papa Jealousy 니지메데 요데지 고마 곰시다가 해나서
In short, his name and title refer to his qualities. Therefore, in performing the practice of Chenrezig, it's important to not simply imagine his form, but to essentially focus on the cultivation of his essence, which is great compassion. I think that as long as you cultivate the essence or essential attribute of Chenrezig, which is great compassion, it's okay if you, in addition to that, visualize his form, but it's also okay if you don't. I say this because I think that sometimes we overemphasize the importance of the visual image of a deity in the practice of deity meditation. In overemphasizing that, we sometimes neglect the wisdom qualities within the mind of the deity. In the case of Chenrezig, we pay no attention to his essence or attributes of mind, which are principally great compassion. So therefore, it's important here to pay more attention to his essential attribute.
Don't visualize Chenrezig without compassion.
Don't visualize Chenrezig without compassion.
Compassion may be Chenrezig Tuensona.
Because if you produced some kind of Chenrezig lacking in compassion, that would be extremely odd.
joking the one mada madigo nangsin malo na jigota sacha malara sacha laga ne solo pon so ye kamba ji sta
laso
ambe kamba ji ta ko de sobo no isada sobo
laso jupo
sobo
laso
ya da ko se dos ko tingjila dewa ji singap chin
laso
tene dewa ji singap dodusa ne ko de nawa ta sangye ba me yorwa ta de ko ge abu hulu ta abu
chomde
nawa ta jaga chimbi
laso
tene abu hulu de tene karasin judos tene de jijun drama person sta karje sun chongam khanasa de jidemi yune jidemi yune tugun jawan jaba pemdos tugun jawan jaba sto koran so da ta tene che a singo sare shuso tene ko abu lo ko 16 de chen
laso
ta ya sing songs tene abu lu ge ne karse ta jigden mi yu ne chugun zhuan zhe ba pe de ta de la shui jia shu shui zang pu zang ba yo
la re
song songs tene chana doji di chama re dos cha송이 답사나 자송이
요발라서
답사나 자송이 인도산에 별 답사나 왜 도와준 부시를 여러 근데 인도산 고 자소 자주는 무엇을 고 나보자 차나도 나보자 되네도 되네 제레시 잠바 녀바래도 잠벨레가 뭐 제자 고 가보자 잠바 뭐 제르바다 가우지 다 근데 다그 소보데 다 고랑 원에 시고야 저로 다데 가래서 다 고들한테 산데 지준 좀 송송 다 달로 대화제 생각 넘시 장만도 근데 인도산에 아보로 지지고 구시레스타 구시바 de 가서 장모 차디가 어렸어. 근데 다 조금 더 앉아 봐 진지님이 유를 막 손이. 되네 룩이 가사디 빠빠. 다데 룩 대야베 룩 충충디 빠빠 다베 개지면 쓰가 보다. 룩 충충 빠빠 룩 대양 까르보 장경이 봐 나보지에 봐. 다 된대가 바바 가자 바바 주스 지 키쇼스 다 대표나 되네 대표미 탐제 되네 대화진지 신감을 제거했다 내가 서로 쿠요라서 나도스 다네 그게 다 된대 숨고다 된대인데 당이 올라수 슈샤리 다직 대탑시 마트나 디사메스도 다 인규잖아 코란라다 루그 바바라고요 다그 소보진 담데 셰디 다들 dinle chungwas dinle samsung nga zyan sam di so ro chen 지번 제레스 군도가고 저바다지
Lasa.
네 친이의 금전에서 하마고잖아 그 제레스 군도가 차시 어허 로봇 나시
Lasa.
저반담다 근데 말했어 다들 천된의 셰베이나 천된 금전 셰베 토는 냠는 셰베이나 그걸 미세 고아지다 춘 구주지다 소주지 알았어. 오케이.
I'm going to tell you a story, and as funny as the story may be, it's not really entirely a joke. In an unspecified part of eastern Tibet, and we'll leave it unspecified because I don't want to offend anyone, in an unspecified part of eastern Tibet, there was a charlatan. And this charlatan told people, I said, I recently went to Sukhavati, the blissful realm of Amitabha. And I went there to meet the Buddha Amitabha. But he called the Buddha Amitabha by a funny name, Abu Ulu. Anyway, that's not that funny in English. But anyway, he went to meet the Buddha Amitabha. And he said, while I was there, Amitabha was asleep. So Aryatara walked by and woke him up, saying, Amitabha, Amitabha, you must wake up, because and he gave himself the name Tulku Droa Drampa, which means the Nirmanakaya who guides beings or leads beings to liberation. He said, Tulku Droa Drampa is about to go to the human world, and you've got to wake up and give him instructions. And so he continued with the story. And so then Amitabha did wake up suddenly. And he said, oh, Tulku Droa Drampa is about to go to the human world. Quick, we must offer him tea to drink and tsamba, parched barley flour, to eat. And then he continued with the story. Now the tea maker, the preparer of tea in the realm of Sukhavati, is the Bodhisattva Vajrapani. And if you've ever wondered why Vajrapani is dark blue in color, it's because he's making tea all the time. Now, His Holiness said this is a reference to the fact that Tibetan kitchens are often very smoky places. And this charlatan, of course, assumed that they must be like that in Sukhavati. So he said, well, it's because he makes tea all the time and gets all that smoke on him that he's dark blue. And as for the color of Chenrezig, he's white because he's the one who fetches the tsamba, the parched barley flour, and he gets the flour all over himself, and that's why he's white. And then, having told them that, he got to the point of his story, and he said, and then Tara instructed me, and she said, this year it is extremely cold here in Sukhavati. And the Amitabha, whom she referred in his relation of the story to as Abu Ulu, is suffering from the cold. So you, Tulku Droa Drampa, please go to the human world and acquire, and in different versions of the story, different numbers are given, but let's say 10, His Holiness said, white lambskins or sheepskins of good quality, and bring them back here. And surely all who offer these to you will be reborn in Sukhavati as a result. And then he concluded the story, and I agreed to do so, and that is why I am here. And so his whole point was just a scam to acquire good quality sheepskins. The point of the story, the reason I'm telling you this story, is that this is the kind of thing that comes from paying too much attention to the appearance of deities without any recollection of the meaning of that appearance.
Today in Justana Chidangi da Gewe Senior but Genesis the way in Binda, Chunjusam Gewe Senior, Tidan Gewe Senior Laya, Kansa Gewe Senior to Chawashida, Soro Gewe Senior to Chawashida, and a Rangism Gewe Senior to Chawa, now I Gewe Senior to Chawa, and that's she on the others.
Now, when we talk about the Kalyana Mitra or the spiritual friend, the guide, who can be a bodhisattva such as Arya Avalokiteshvara himself, there are 4 types of spiritual friends. There is the spiritual friend who is a person, the spiritual friend that is the Dharma, the teachings themselves, the spiritual friend...
Charwa,
which is when the teachings arise as a spiritual friend. There is one's own mind as a spiritual friend, and then there is the spiritual friend within all appearances.
Today, you stand out to Papa Genesis. Churching and Azu Karajarusana, Chidangi, Lamdroba de Susugi, then Bezuel Rale de Vata, Susu. Rangasim Rangan Dugavale and a Ranga Taba, the Ranga Dugavale, the Shengi Chaguja Meva. That is so much. The evening as taking example, some of the Papa Jerry down, energy, Papa Jambe and Double, did not change somebody Zugi, Yaseki Jabale, and Ashe example better than. Dena singa zu tendeji jesu lava indusane and power jersey kui number yilicha de churchine tendeji sunjeru jitu ane tene indusa di kunsen dene jir sange chue tamje yanda ba gewe shingi landro gi ne dembala dene landro gi ne dembala ralebe yanda ba gewe shingi la ralebe yanda ba gewe shingi la rale judia now,
with regard to reliance on a spiritual friend, from one point of view, of course, the path is something that we must traverse through our own efforts. And as the Buddha taught, we must achieve liberation for ourselves through our own effort. But nevertheless, to emulate the example of a great bodhisattva, such as Chenrezig or Arya Manjushri, is of great benefit. And this is especially the case in that, as the Buddha taught, all Buddha Dharmas depend upon this spiritual friend, because it is the spiritual friend who tells us or teaches us what to accept and what to avoid.
Papa Cheres ki namthar korang ki nga zulia langdor ki ne samutyong yuebi indusane ti junsen tene Papa Cheres di rijanshin ki nga zu Papa Cheres ngurzu nga zu ji Papa Cheres gewe shinyin du tenpa shimebi ine ya nga zu nangole ya ji Papa Cheres ki namthar dang Papa Cheres ki gyasa ye jeba tada tamjile nga zu ji 퇴삼 공송 냠리체베네 냠리체연두 엔데다가 직랑도르네 사모등의 인두스타디 바바제레스디 정신기 개회신이 사용을
In the case of the Bodhisattva Chenrezig, his deeds and his example teach us in a very profound way what to do and what not to do, which means that even though we may not personally directly encounter the Bodhisattva Chenrezig, he still naturally, in a way, becomes our spiritual friend, because we are learning what is to be done and what is not to be done from his example and from the histories of his deeds.
Papa Cheres ki nyablendi ene ngar jar phabe yu dang 다는 시 표현한지 정당 나 대신에 다 자나라 수업에 유주 망고지라 다geb침보당 에 참에 토동기 티두치아르지 인사래.
The practice of Arya Avalokita meditation on him was traditionally very widespread in India, in Tibet, in China, and in other countries, and was by and large the quintessence of the practice of many.
Dene du penang ram ta deshido ane zonda ay andana je pe kanje jolya bena konsi jangwe chimbo cho jawa yishino do bina ji pabajeresi and drovedendo anime su tuine energy simjing turns up in be and then azu yiji chimchi others today indus ane azu ji kaduine azu pebege samle narole pabajeresi living buddha da living da kada azu gi mi jia ye bu ji dang an tong ji mi ge tong ye ba da na xin ji na we twa ye ba energy 된데도 비지량 아주 그뒤에 나간다 바바지에서 손보를 지어 버리지 아주 그뒤에 비니 이제도 수리가 알았어.
In the particular case of Tibet, because His Holiness the Dalai Lama is regarded by us as the appearance of Chenrezig, of Arya Avalokita, in human form for the benefit of beings, then for all Tibetans, we feel that we have a very personal connection with him, that Chenrezig is very much, literally, a living Buddha who appears among us and on whom we rely in a very direct and personal way.
아니 나랑 개변에 당 나랑 또 충중거리야 나랑 dem 가수에 계사다 차세 김산 디나로리 미네 very warm summer that day practice 가지 파우제레스 냠네 에 차버르시다 가서 위에 든지지레시.
And I was born into and grew up in a family and home which was filled with the warmth which comes from the practice of Chenrezig meditation.
맨에 다 양가 대야 드셔 보셨다. 세상에 많이 가시 경거하게 아말라데 지단디 미게 동의해서 말이다. 아니 주시다면다 아들이 정도로 미게 마동체 인비냐 아니 거기 다바를 좀 많이 주네. 제가 안 다나신게 아말라데 다나시 제가 다나시 네 주사네 아니 같이 살롱디 살롱한테 좀 많이 따로 된지가 나로 살롱 주다. 근데 주사를 정신기 니지 바자로 저 사모지 가상의 지시에 니지 바자 중중거든 지중을 써도 제제 드네 바자를 면조.
For example, as some of you may have heard, my mother constantly recites the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which meant that from the earliest age I was surrounded by this sound, engulfed by the sound of this mantra. And
do something.
About you didn't see with your eyes?
No.
Well, let me finish.
Where's the stick?
Stick. I forgot the stick.
Okay.
You could strangle me with my tie.
this woman, grandmother.
Grandmother.
This year.
Oh,
Ama's last name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tatia.
His Holiness.
Ame Kema.
Ame Tema.
Da Ame Amaida. Tijela Amach.
What I got, the mistake I made this time was His Holiness was speaking about his maternal grandmother. So my maternal grandmother constantly recited, and my mother after her, the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. So I grew up engulfed by or surrounded by its sound. And I think, therefore, that yesterday when I spoke about having the habit from the earliest age of a kind of compassion, I think this may result from that.
Today, Dusane. Nye tuju di ski dang ben dang a 가서 아주 김상을 계제 안에 김상 같이 도와다 가서 김규기 판어서 말해.
Last.
되게 중요한 말에 판어 말에 거네. 로드윈제 봐. 아니 롱바신다 지금 까마본 거 지시더라. 아니 신다게 민도데. 이내다 지금 파버제레스기 냠는 시하로 단들이 ngarangi amalare ame amalare 주스규 인두사 다디 지 냠내지 단도 디지 질럽이 맞아로 줘야 되듯이 소도 내리는 사바지 반어로디 나라토 되버디 반어로 인세나라도 만어로 세나라도 다 가르세고나 다 대인사레스 대인두사네 안 가도 이게 두gün 된대 이번 인사하네 두gün public order digital 양의 public jealousy charge 외관에 transmission of some 네 지요아레스 다들 소디 당할 판어로 신다 개미도스다 판어로 만으로 신다 개미도 다디 여러 인도사디 에네 기호 탐지하는 고셔체네 에네 엔 탐지지 가르쳐야지 김사지 뭐 원홈 som을 진짜 두빈 받아 된들 전체롭지 인삼체 에네 저거를 지유스 다 뭐보시만도
Whenever there's a family, we can speak of the inheritance that one receives from one's parents in that family. And because I received no other inheritance from my parents, because in my 7th or 8th year I was recognized and therefore moved elsewhere, I regard this Chenrezig meditation as practice as the inheritance that I received, because of my experience of it in early life. I have the habit of it. I have what I would call the blessing of it. You can think of it as my paternal inheritance, my maternal inheritance, but whichever, I think of it as my soul inheritance from my parents. And therefore, I almost invariably share this inheritance with everyone by offering this transmission for this four-armed Chenrezig practice at every public audience. In doing so, in sharing my only family inheritance with you, I feel that I'm making us all into one family, as like one home.
다들 삼라 파버체레스고데 곰루스시데 예 제레스 차시베고네 디가르 주던 로든 카야면서 좋아 다들 순제래 당동게 말해
Lari.
당나레 수체리
Dana re second yore.
말에 생기 올레리
Mishi, mare second go manyo.
오야 아 고마뉴 다들 다들 이제 다 다나 이미 지시는 거만 해야지.
Last.
다나 이나 정아 좋지 다삽니다. 근데 이제 디고만 롱즈데 데 슈들이야. 디 송아데 이게 조모디 엔자도 롱즈데 엔디 쇼데 지 메디테이션 디세 잘.
The transmission that I give for this practice is based on the liturgy Benefit for Beings throughout all space, which was composed by the Mahasiddha Tangtung Gelpo. And so at the beginning during the 15th century. And at the beginning I will recite the liturgy and then give the transmission of the mantra, and then we'll meditate for a little bit and it will be done. So now please repeat the mantra after me.
Om
Om
Mani
Mani
Padme
Padme
Hum
Om
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 Mani
Mani
Padme
Padme
Hum
Om
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 Mani
Mani
Padme
Padme
Hum
Om.
Tadi jela nyamdoinda nyamdoche nyamdojinde mani dinde ndi jela di meditation thoughts kama chitsa no boche na sleep. Okay.
So next I will recite some more, and then we will recite the mantra together, and then we'll meditate for about a minute. I'm going to keep it to just a minute so that I don't fall asleep. And next, we'll meditate a bit.
Papa Jerry Judos, Papa Jerry say, share the round dendeva. In a Yusa, the Shusa, the Juzula show deba. In a Juzugi, Takajan. True. 다가 주주가 되지 쇼디에서 좀 다체 야가지고 쳐야 말해 킬로미터 다들 쳤으면 다들 디간데 예서 니지 준비를 이제 왜 말대 저 가베를 준비 왜 말대 제 진네마 왜 가르쳐다 왜 샤리 마 장기닝가라마 가르쳐지 왜 가보 공부도가나 왜 가본 다다도 죄네 에너지 투기 가사 참아도 니지기 에르베 연대한 함제 장기 귤레베 가서 로그나 로담반는시 총소사베 메반제
Now, visualize that or imagine that the Bodhisattva Chenrezig is above your head. Although he's above your head, he's facing you. So, and don't worry about exactly how far away he is. Don't try to measure it in meters or kilometers or anything. And think that he is present in that way above and before you, radiant and brilliant with light, and the embodiment of loving kindness and compassion. And then think that he melts into brilliant white light and dissolves directly into your heart, which causes all of his love and compassion to be transferred to you, to be introduced into you, your being, like electricity. And then His Holiness says he didn't say anything about him dissolving. He said, don't start dissolving things. And no,
just stay there.
He's still there, but rays of brilliant white light shoot out from his heart, dissolve directly into your heart, transferring all of his loving kindness and compassion directly into you, like electricity being conveyed by an electric cable.
And the 다디 제래 कुछ बोलते हैं ये ता जने असमता ते मेरे फिनिश तो करो there we go okay then I will finish yeah 다들 님은이 저ring이야 가수래 니지 거래야 가면 쉬어 좀 되시라고 정성스 안에 din데 가서 님의 뒤 semjen 상황 하자지 님마스 두산에 가서다지 어다도사 누주 탐제 님을 줘대봐 누주 탐제 님을 줘대봤어 다 님의 다 가서 집에는 알아서 좀 벗어나 봐 다 치기 네 인지된 탐지 carbon dioxide king 다들 다 아주 난게 주 기semjen 탐제 다 가르 ignorant side carbon dioxide 아가스 근데 individual이야 안에 잡아든 인지 거래야 배 가주래 챈베 내가 잡아든 인지 챈베 내가 중세지 좀 돼야 아장게 개발 상보 도스미 인주사나 근데 니 왜니게리야 아주 뒤주망 오스단체 아니 잡아든 인지 거래야 중세 디버 쳐봐 근데 고급 좀 돼. 자신이가 엔 내가 자수베라 롱수제베 아니 다 사변도 대비어 인두산에 시라가고 좀
I'm delighted to have been able to spend the last 2 days with you, discussing compassion. In times like those we live in which it is said that both the environment and the inhabitants of the environment are pretty well down to the dregs, which in our case means we inhabit an environment more or less filled with carbon dioxide, and we, the inhabitants, are afflicted by a great degree of ignorance. In such times as this, to even recollect loving kindness and compassion is a tremendous virtue. And therefore, I'm delighted to have had this opportunity to offer you some familiarity with the ideas behind loving kindness and compassion, and to plant seeds within you.
universal responsibility. Universal. Don't so mean you come in again, I'm Jikungi. Adi that forget or Juna. Don't so mean you didn't come again, I'm Jikungi the Suri. Rajiv
Lassa.
Jo Gokong Gotine and a Konazo di Tamjelalia and a Gardin Cheddar and Tuji Cheddar, Sem Ning Tauba and Jesu Irandang, then a Najushui.
And I'd like to thank from the depths of my heart and express my gratitude to the Foundation for Universal Responsibility, founded by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and to Rajiv, who leads it. And if you translate Foundation of Universal Responsibility into Tibetan, you get something like a group who take full responsibility on themselves for the well-being of these billions and billions of worlds. So I guess we have to be very grateful to Rajiv, because he evidently takes that responsibility on himself. I want to thank him and the foundation, therefore, from the depth.
And Dana Jangazu did the Sojarwa, the Sangoria, Danashin, Tosana Shays, near the ready preparation, the Kanka met the Rasta, Karsa di Kazan, Dozi de Leche, Dene, Karsa di Varanasi, Varanasangazu, Pebelosatan, Pebelos the Sayama. Jazang, yes, some of the Pebelosana do. Nijinala Mindu. Today in the Losa got thank you something. Niji got some of that Chuma song, Jeda 30 of that Chuma song. Jeda sound of their Gonta Shines. Yina Kanda Azu some catch you and Azu some Yamdon Zom and Yamjin Gashri to Toa. David Soa, Gavi Soa, and the Digi Soa, Sarvajil, Lonsuja, Chumbadi, Arang Nesta Cavajuns, Didn't Arang, Jina some Lotus in the Shanes. And a Yanayando, and a Shen Javatan, and a Yanayando, and a Pensu Zawatan, Energy Kashre, Nintabe, Jabasambu, Yotayara use. And Danashi, Yatanshuanaji, Chambada Niji Sadi Zaljang, Chambada Niji call a base, Arago, Sabe Kasua Chichena, Tunge Nijini Be Chimbuye, Yinayang, Roban Chematu, that is some sort of Tunge Dua. Nabarumang music teas. Kids dosta. Kijik the nebe, Moda Dunja dos. Mora Donja de Masus. Madundusane Kitty Jab was something to do. Kitty de Madigan Bujabdos. Then it Buddhas of Ayushana and Bushintotos. Bush Hasharan, it's Chitung Yotos. Harajos. Oh, that's how I do not the day in Gimare. Taimbina the Zod and Azuki Kasre. Somebody needs that as in La Lena da, the case of the La Lena, Kali, or Chunsan and La Lena. Penangumaina, the Wengi past great master somewhere in the past. Takunazu Karnan Goresana, Pena Jugana Nolia, Venet in the period. Pedusan Kwanzu, comparison to sanity, Simjin Shengi to Komapui with the Degomevache. Comparison. Tana Gerard China and Simjin Shengi to and a top jess and I Simjin it. That day the Gigi Shenduns by Gurni, Kadar Chawa Chungsa, so Niri Mizina Langarcho, Teba Shendu, Gutu, Shendu, Gusidus, Shendu, Mini Session to Gorongel, Lamsa, Shen Pember, the young Kala, Shendu to Mishan, and a Galiga Yaya Dambini, we honest. Mato Jangazu Tindegi Tupti, Garjo, Tup Samo de Zomasiana, Jimmy Neparadoji, Simjin Shena, Lamsanti Pench Mato and Diniji de Musuba of the Dichana, there's the Kalakabru in the Sondos. And Dare and Tosenas. Thank you for you. No. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm ready. I'm already here.
And in addition, I want to thank all of you, thank everyone involved in any way. I didn't really prepare myself for this. From Bodh Gaya, I went to Varanasi and remained there through the preparations and initial celebration of the Tibetan New Year, Losar. And since the celebrations of the New Year, or Losar, are continuing in a certain way, I would say that my head is in Losar and not really in compassion, for which I apologize. But at the same time, I'm very pleased to have had this opportunity to intensify my feeling of connection with all of you. And I thank you all for providing me with this opportunity. I hope sincerely from the depths of my heart that our discussion will produce great benefit for you and for others. Now, with regard to compassion, sometimes when compassion is held within and not expressed, not applied in action, it can become a source of suffering. The feeling of compassion where you feel that nevertheless you can't do anything to help can be frustrating. Someone once came to me and said that they had seen a dog who had been hit by a car. The dog was wounded and was lying there and was also being fed upon by some insects. And there wasn't much this person could do for the dog. Even if he removed the insects, those insects would starve to death. So he really felt that lacking in any way to implement his compassion, and he found it rather depressing. That being the case, we need to remember that situations that we encounter are not always like that. And compassion does not always have to be viewed as something where there's nothing we can do, because in fact, there always is something we can do. If we start small, start with the actual implementation or practice of compassion with small things and in very simple ways, we will in fact be emulating the example of great masters of the past who ensured that whatever they did, even neutral actions, were motivated by the altruistic wish to benefit others. So that when great masters of the past went into retreat, with every step they took toward the place of retreat, they thought, may with this step I bring benefit to beings. May this step benefit beings. Whenever they tied their belt on at the beginning of the day, they would think, may my tying on this belt be of benefit to beings. In that way, if we think that everything we're doing, even if it's a neutral action that is not directly beneficial to other beings, if we think that that is done for the purpose of benefiting others, while it's not the case that it immediately produces some kind of fantastic benefit for others, it will be the case that your motivation will accrue and will eventually produce action that will be directly beneficial to many. Without such profound methods of starting from very simple actions and so on, we don't have any way to implement compassion. So please keep this in mind, and thank you all very much.
It's with great sort of trepidation and hesitation that I intrude on sort of following the words of a great master and the profound impact it has had on us. But I think as a collective gesture of deep appreciation to Peter for having been such a wonderful interpreter and such an eloquent transmitter of His Holiness's ideas, words, wisdom, and much of his humor. Thank you, Peter.
You're very welcome. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
There is little that we can offer His Holiness in material, physical terms, other than our deep, profound, passionate gratitude for the time that he has taken and then spent with us. And it is quite beyond what you have said, Your Holiness, has been your very presence and who you are, as much as what you say to us, that is truly, profoundly and deeply transforming. And I guess that, it's just 200 full hearts that must speak for themselves, because I really don't know what to say, except that with a prayer for your long life, your continuing happiness, and that we may have the ongoing privilege and pleasure and blessing of listening to you again and again. And I would also be failing to say that, when His Holiness said kind words about me, I sort of felt like the white dust from the flour in the kitchen covering me up. The people who've really done the work are hiding in that corner, and I'd sort of invite them to come and present a scarf on behalf of all of us. Raji Ramanan, and Tuptan Sevang, and Kunchok Dolma. Where is she? Yes. And this is Devinder, who works with us in the office. We'll just take 2 minutes to rearrange the furniture, and then we will start the process.